Hey guys, this is an email that I sent this guy, Stephen K. Hayes, who is a real life ninja. Um, so let's look at when I sent it. August 14th, 2016. So this was 3 years before I got into telekinesis. He sent me a letter in response, an email, but this was this was how I signed off back then. Think only of that which you would have appear before your very eyes. I am Superman, Wizard, Warrior, Jedi, Shaman, Fool, Master, Creator, Magus, star-seated human being. And so I eventually changed my channel name from David Madison the Guardian to Starseed Alchemy. I am clothed in all roles, subject to none. Then I changed that. So what's interesting about this letter is I didn't send it to him. I sent another one to him. It says, before I am inspired to write, I find that conversations or whole monologues sound out in my mind. Ideas swirl and coalesce, intermingling, sometimes spinning off, but there always seems to be a common thread. I am not yet at the stage where I'm having a two-way conversation with you, but I feel that that is coming. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich spoke of his imaginary counselors. Among them, I think, were people such as Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Edison, Andrew Carnegie. His visualizations were so vivid that these people began to take on a noted character all their own in his mind. I am currently reading The Ninja and Their Secret Fighting Art after having finished The Ninja Mind. I got an email notice from my library a few days ago that the two books I had requested of yours had arrived for interlibrary loan. I have read up to chapter 4. Several things detailed in your book I have come across. For instance, my last colleague mentor was adamant about that close quarters heel thrust kick. And when you described the motions and feeling of wind, it took me back a few years to my first instance of studying Aikido. There was a kind of squat, powerfully built man who bid me come at him. He swirled with his hands out, and it felt as if there was actually the sucking in and then spitting out of kind of energy. I was more impressed with him than even the teacher at the time because of that super subtle yet powerful feeling of a hurricane that he summoned up at will. I was just watching a movie with Channing Tatum where he plays this nice, polite kid from some country town coming to New York. He used to wrestle at his high school, and after defending himself and trying to chase down some guys who did a divert the attention with the pretty girl and then a snatching grab, he gets introduced to the world of underground fighting. In one scene, he's going up against a boxer. The boxer is so fast and vicious that he knocks Channing down twice. With a flurry of jabs and hooks, it's all Channing can do to throw up his hands. In that scene was summed up the feeling of fire for me. Oh, there are other scenes which call up that feeling for me, but that was the first one my mind jumped to. As I'm reading books for self-improvement, I've come to use a very useful tool of immediately recalling similar instances in my life. This helps me to gain a deeper understanding of the lesson being taught. If I can't do that, I summon up a movie scene or a book scene or even use my imagination in order to give character to what is being related. This causes me to read a bit slower, yet I feel it is well worth it. to digest that which you are learning rather than just flying over the surface. Sometimes I'll put the book down entirely and just think or contemplate for 5 to 10 minutes. This tends to bring additional insights relating to what I'm reading, but often even to other areas of my life. When I was just a kid, I feel that I was training to become a ninja Jedi warrior. I didn't know it at the time, but used my imagination a great deal to help innovate around obstacles. Now, I can continue reading this, but I'm not going to. Um, Rather, I'm going to go to the one I actually sent him. I think it was this one. And it was, what, 8 days later? Ah, no, it wasn't. Let's see here. Hmm. Well, I sent him one, and he sent me one in return. So let me see. My, uh, okay, let's do Ninja. All right, let's do Ninja again and look down through here. Hmm. Let's say Ninja Mind. All right, let's. Um, Oops. Let me see here. Here it is. So Stephen replies back to me, and this is what he said to me. Tuesday, August 2nd. Which means that I must have done that earlier than that. Ah, this was my letter to him. I really hope that this gets to Stephen K. Hayes because I figured I was might be sending it to a business of his or something. My name is blah blah blah. I've spent a lifetime and now I'm 36, attempting to make enough money to afford things which could help transform my life. One of the, one of those things is the movement arts, especially the flow arts. I was impressed that a Westerner took it upon himself to attempt to go to the Far East and learn from such a secretive society. So, Stephen K. Hayes, as a Westerner, went to, I think it was Japan, and studied with these people and then took their stuff back to the United States. And they actually had a prophecy or they knew he was coming. That's, it's kind of crazy. And that he overcame whatever obstacles were placed in his way to not only learn those secrets, but be allowed to bring them back and teach them. This reminds me of the kids waiting outside the Shaolin Temple in order to learn Kung Fu. I believe that I am here to help with global issues, perhaps human trafficking, perhaps learning to utilize the light body in order to heal or travel through time and space. I don't want to sound naive or like a simple dreamer, but I have experienced incredible spiritual things in my life. I was a foster kid, went in the Marines, was homeless for a number of years. My biggest enemy seemed to be that I never had enough money. I work for myself or for my clients doing odd jobs, but I want to have money to go to the massage school and to attend your school in Boulder, to travel the world to meet people and do things and experience what life has to offer. My dad taught me how to think for myself. I taught myself most of the discipline that I now have. I have compassion, intelligence, knowledge, and understanding that is more about the underlying matrix which ties all together in a web, rather than the subject studied, which makes the difference. When I was 16, let's see here. When I was 16, I studied under Grandmaster Lencius in Vermont for a short period of time. Money got in the way. When I was older, waiting tables, I attended Aikido, but due to losing my job, had to leave. It was my choice. His school was on the brink of financial collapse. Since I couldn't pay, I didn't want to drag him down with me. Later on, I studied Aikido in Boulder again. I was drawn by the spirit, but then was crestfallen when a friend of mine, who was a very good human being, was treated so poorly. I saw a breakdown between what was being taught and what was being taught. I don't want to name names. Suffice it to say that the image I had of what that way of life represented and what the reality of that instance revealed were two very different things. Just recently, I met a prior Special Forces man who lives on the street. People called him Guru. He went around teaching people Kali. It is what he taught when he was in the military. He became my personal instructor, but again, because of his negative outlook and bitterness, it seems that we have parted ways. I really like your school. At the same time, I cannot at present afford the prices. I do not believe that someone should be denied the chance for life mastery instruction simply because they don't have the funds. At the same time, I understand that a business is being run, and if nobody paid any money, nobody could benefit, as there would be no school to speak of. Yet I feel that some kind of scholarship or other arrangement could be created in my case. I am not simply a student, I have initiative. I have suffered much from life, but strive to turn that into advantage and wisdom and discernment. I do not belong in poverty any more. There was a time for that, in order to learn humility and compassion and wisdom and how to gauge what worked and what didn't. I learned to begin to master my emotions. I learned to gain a certain amount of discipline over my life. I learned to play more and to really go for what I wanted. I have spoken to Mary at the Quest Center. She has said that she feels that when I am ready, I should come back. I offered to pay little amounts of money when I could. To me, the teacher not only allows a student to stumble and fall, but will reach out to a deserving student to help them become more. How can I help others when I am stuck scrambling? I have lived on an apartment voucher inside the same apartment now for 3 years. I believe that I have the power, courage, clarity, and heart and spirit to help alleviate a lot of the world's suffering by bringing people from different walks of life together in a spirit of harmony. In fact, I believe that this is one of my callings, to learn how to do this and then apply it toward real life issues. Please honor me with a scholarship. Someday I am going to be a Grand Master. In fact, Grandmaster Lencius once, when I asked him in Shotokan class, "Do you think I could ever become a black belt?" replied, "Not only that, but I believe, or you could, become a Grand Master." I asked him if he thought that about the other students. He said no. I asked him why, and he said something about my intensity, something which I was born with. My previous Kali master told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Most people, when they get angry, they lose focus. Your anger seems to serve to make you even more focused." I had taken it upon myself to learn contact juggling after reading a Tai Chi story about an old master who had such amazing powers of yielding that a bird perched upon his arm could not fly away. I read that years ago, yet the importance of that single statement stayed with me. The one exercise of practicing contact juggling has taught me the importance of patience, overcoming frustration, breathing, being graceful yet strong, moving with the whole body. These are notions which I saw you express in a YouTube video where you were showing tactics of evading. Leave the hand there. You don't have to get it off your body right away. I'm paraphrasing here, but you get my point. I am not just a student, but a teacher in the making. I have taught myself the power of visualizing movements, how they look, how they feel, where the attacker is, how their body and mind turn given just a slight turning of the hand. All these things I have taught myself over a period of years. Most of it was probably during the time I was homeless. You cannot say that I am not hungry for this. So again, Mr. Hayes, I implore you to let me study until I can get my finances in order. At some point, I will be very wealthy, and part of that wealth will be used to fund and direct large projects for change and transformation. I'm not there yet, but I'm good at pretending. I'm going to pretend that when you read this, you feel the empathy spoken of by the one you guarded for so long, the Dalai Lama. I have his book, An Open Heart, Practicing Compassion in Everyday Life. It sits on my bottom shelf, but angled up so that I see it every time I walk into the kitchen. I eventually hope to study with you personally. All my best to you and yours. Dave, Nate, Nave. And then, of course, the tagline. And so this is what he wrote back to me. Let me see if I can find it. Ninja Mind. Oh, I didn't need to go out on that, I guess. Hold on a sec here. Mm-hmm. Ninja Mind. Stephen K. Hicks. That's what it was. It's an all, and it was Stephen K. Hayes. Okay. This is what he wrote. My school is in Dayton, Ohio. The school in Boulder operates independently under its owner. They license the curriculum and my structure, but they are not my school. You might talk to the owner there. I do not know if they have any scholarship or not. But more important than training in Tushindo is getting your life in order. I wish you the best in getting converted from struggling to prosperous. That needs to come first before all else. And then, of course, here's his information. And so I wrote him back a few more times. In the past, my emails have become very, very, very sparse, I guess. So I'll email somebody. I might email them maybe something about this long, but never, this long. I can't say never, but so this is what I wrote him back. I said, I figured that that might be the case. Again, I appreciate you taking the time to respond. By the way, do you know Grandmaster Rick Lynch's House of the Legend? I figured that masters would know one another. In my travels, I came to live in Boise, Idaho, and then moved to get a job over in Sun Valley at the Sun Valley Ski Company. It's kind of funny. I had been offered a promotion, then was put on morning duty instead of evening duty. The man who had promoted me was very good at his job. After I made it clear that I would not work off the clock, I was told I had to leave. Now, to clarify that, it wasn't by the guy who promoted me. Um, they actually fired that guy, and that guy was phenomenal. He was the guy running everything. The guy who fired me was like the son or the cousin, who got the job because he's in the family kind of thing. Um, so after I made it clear that I would not work off the clock, I was told I had to leave. I was homeless again that quick. I had been living on campus getting some kind of stipend for food and a little extra. I had been trying to save money to travel more. When they let me go, I slept under the bus bench in the middle of winter. Earlier that day or the day before, I had this intuitive urge to get a sleeping bag. I could only afford one with the busted zipper. That night, my core temperature dropped. In the morning, people called an ambulance. I've faced death a few times. Once in the middle of winter, here in Boulder, I was making my way through the woods at night, following what I thought was surely a shortcut or a back way to the warming center. Seeing a flat patch of snow, I jumped up and over onto it, thinking it was some kind of sidewalk. Guess my brain was a bit frozen because the next thing I knew, I came crashing down through brittle ice into some kind of pond or lake. I had my heavy pack on, several coats and boots. These soaked up the water quickly, and I could feel my core temperature dropping like a rock. I immediately swung off my stuff, throwing it as far as I could toward the bank. Then I put my hands on the ice and pushed down to lift my body up and out. But all I succeeded in doing was breaking off more of the ice and plunging deeper into the water. I knew I had to calm my mind, that panic would not serve me. So I took a few deep breaths and told myself that I would find a way out. I just had to think. It was then that I remembered back when I was in science class and we were going over force being dispersed over an area. I had the sudden idea to let my legs float upward, basically behind me, so that I would be parallel with the ice, and then I managed to pull myself along my belly out of the water and along the ice until I felt I had reached a far more secure location. I was very fortunate, for the pond lake was only a few hundred yards from the warming center. Many times I have been in situations that have killed many people, but somehow I have survived. I don't even have frostbite anywhere on my body. That's pretty amazing considering all the times I nearly froze to death. Ninja speaks of endurance? Well, then I guess I was training to be a ninja before I even knew it, way back when I was just a child. Yes, I need to get my life in order. That is a given. But I don't want to segregate things and start living my life when I finally get the means to do so. I want to live it right this moment. I will find a way, Mr. Hayes. I always do. As dear old Spock would say, live long and prosper. Now, there are many reasons why I shared this with you guys. It's very personal. But I will be in the public light at some point, and people will go through my history. They will dig up everything about me. Um, and much of this won't be private anymore. Um, so one of the reasons is to give you another idea of who I am. I'm not just the Joker who is funny. I'm not just the guy who flirts with women and tells dirty jokes and is lewd. I'm not just the guy who does telekinesis, right? There is a method to my madness, as they say. And one of the first things I thought about was I wanted to share this because I wanted to prove to you that you can write a letter to somebody who you respect, and sometimes they'll write you back. And just because he didn't answer me again doesn't mean that somebody won't answer you and that you won't develop a relationship with that person. And that person could become your mentor. That person could take you to heights that you've never even dreamed of. They could introduce you to key people, right? And in the future, I'm going to be writing a lot of books. I've already written a lot of material, um, and some of it's been structured into books, but it hasn't been published. Um, and in those books, one of the things I'm going to be talking about is this concept of the meta lever. So a lever is, there are three classes of levers, but a lever basically, in mathematical terms, it's when you put in a certain amount of effort and you get back an amplified amount of effort. Now, you always sacrifice something, so maybe it's time, maybe it's energy, maybe it's distance. So, what a lever does is a lever converts one kind of energy or one kind of force or one kind of intangible, you might say, into another. And when you learn how those levers, what levers need to be used for what purposes, and when you can integrate those, and then not only integrate, but when you can learn the power of synergy so that the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts, right? This is some of what I'll be teaching when the time comes. All right, guys, I wish you well, and blessings.